Imagine standing on a rain-soaked beach, your bare feet pressing into the damp sand. With each step, you leave behind a perfect impression, a record of your passing, destined to be erased by the next tide. A fleeting signature of your existence, gone within hours. Yet sometimes, through a miraculous convergence of circumstances, footprints survive. Not just for days or years, but for thousands, even millions of years. These preserved tracks become frozen moments in time, messages from ancestors we never knew. What happens when we discover human-like footprints in places humans were never supposed to be, or from times when our species hadn't yet evolved? These impossible tracks challenge everything we think we know about our past. Throughout history, ancient footprints have emerged from stone, volcanic ash, and hardened mud to tell stories that contradict our established timelines. They appear in the wrong places, at the wrong times, made by the wrong people. The scientific community often responds to these anomalies with skepticism or silence. After all, conventional wisdom holds that human evolution and migration followed a predictable path. But the ground beneath our feet tells a different story. Tonight, we explore humanity's lost footprints, the preserved tracks that challenge our understanding of when and how our ancestors moved across the planet. These silent witnesses speak of journeys, rituals, and moments long forgotten by history. Consider the White Sands footprints in New Mexico, dated to 23,000 years ago, a discovery that suddenly pushed back human arrival in the Americas by thousands of years. Or the Laetoli footprints in Tanzania, 3.6 million years old, showing our ancestors walked upright far earlier than once thought. These aren't just scientific curiosities. They're fragments of our collective human story, pieces of a puzzle we're still assembling. Each discovery forces us to redraw the maps of human migration and rewrite the timeline of our species' journey. The study of ancient footprints, ichnology, reveals more than just where someone walked. These tracks tell us how they moved, whether they ran or walked, if they were carrying children, hunting, or fleeing. They capture moments of daily life otherwise lost to time. What makes this mystery so compelling is that footprints can't lie. Unlike artifacts that can be moved or bones that might be misidentified, footprints are created in the moment. They record a genuine presence that cannot be disputed, yet they can be misunderstood, misinterpreted, or misdated. The controversy surrounding many ancient footprint discoveries highlights the tension between evidence and established theory, between what we see and what we believe possible. Tonight, we will walk in the footsteps of our ancestors, tracing paths that lead to unexpected destinations. We'll explore what these ancient impressions tell us about our origins, and why some of the most significant discoveries have been ignored or disputed. This is not merely an academic exercise. Understanding our true path across time and space helps us understand who we are. The story of human migration is the story of human adaptation, resilience, and connection. As we journey tonight, we'll encounter footprints that shouldn't exist according to conventional wisdom. We'll examine the evidence with open minds, acknowledging both scientific rigor and the possibility that our current understanding is incomplete. The mystery deepens when we consider that many ancient footprint sites show evidence of children playing, families traveling together, or communities hunting. These aren't just physical journeys. They're glimpses into the social lives of our earliest ancestors. Some of the most compelling footprint discoveries remain controversial decades after their finding. Others have forced dramatic revisions of scientific consensus. All of them invite us to question what we think we know about human history. Tonight, we will explore what happened when our ancestors took their first steps across continents, and why the clues they left behind do not add up to the story we've been told. Together, we'll examine the evidence without prejudice. We'll consider alternative explanations for anomalous footprints and contemplate what they might mean for our understanding of humanity's journey through time. The path ahead leads through millions of years and across 6 continents. It will challenge our assumptions and perhaps leave us with more questions than answers. But that is the nature of true discovery. So walk with me now, back through the corridors of time, to when our distant ancestors left their mark upon the earth. Marks that would survive against all odds to challenge us today. Chapter 2. Messages in stone and mud. The stakes couldn't be higher when we talk about ancient human footprints. These aren't just curious impressions in stone. They're direct evidence of presence, movement, and behavior that can completely rewrite the story of human evolution and migration. When a set of footprints appears in the wrong place or time, it creates a ripple effect through multiple scientific disciplines. Archaeologists must reconsider settlement patterns. Anthropologists question migration routes. Paleontologists re-examine their evolutionary timelines. Consider what happened in 2021 when researchers confirmed human footprints in White Sands, New Mexico, dating to 23,000 years ago. This single discovery pushed back human presence in North America by several thousand years and undermined the long-held Clovis first theory. The implications were enormous. Suddenly, archaeologists had to explain how humans navigated to the heart of North America during the peak of the last ice age, a time when massive ice sheets should have made such a journey impossible. This is the pattern we see repeatedly with ancient footprint discoveries. They don't just add details to our existing narrative. They often demand we create an entirely new story to accommodate their existence. When we find footprints where they shouldn't be, we're forced to question fundamental assumptions. Did humans arrive earlier than we thought? Did they take different routes? Did they possess capabilities we haven't given them credit for? The implications extend beyond academic interest. These discoveries speak to our identity as a species, to the ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience of our ancestors. They remind us that human history is not a straight line, but a complex web of migrations, innovations, and survivals. If the more controversial footprint discoveries prove authentic, we might need to reconsider not just when humans arrived in certain places, but possibly even what constitutes a human in the first place. Take the mysterious footprints found in Crete, seemingly dating to 5.7 million years ago. If valid, they would suggest human-like creatures were walking upright in Europe long before such behaviors were thought possible in our evolutionary timeline. The traditional narrative places our earliest bipedal ancestors exclusively in Africa until much later migrations. Finding such ancient human-like tracks in Europe would force a complete reimagining of human evolution. And what about the Haysborough footprints in Norfolk, England? Dated to 800,000 years ago, they represent the oldest human footprints found outside Africa, nearly twice as old as humans were thought to have reached northern Europe. These discoveries suggest our ancestors were more mobile, more adaptable to extreme environments, and perhaps more technologically capable than we've given them credit for. They force us to expand our conception of what early humans could achieve. The questions multiply with each new finding. If humans reached the Americas 23,000 years ago, how did they survive the harsh glacial conditions? If hominins were walking upright in Europe 5.7 million years ago, does that change where our species originated? These aren't just academic puzzles. They strike at the heart of our human story. They challenge us to reconsider not just when and where we walked, but who we are and how we came to be here. The footprints also provide rare glimpses into behavior. Unlike stone tools or fossils, tracks can show movement patterns, group dynamics, and even moments of playfulness or panic that other archaeological evidence simply cannot capture. At Laetoli in Tanzania, 3.6 million year old footprints reveal not just bipedal walking, but possibly a family group, an adult with a child walking beside them, maybe even carrying a smaller child. This intimate moment across millennia connects us emotionally to our distant ancestors. The Angar footprints in Tanzania, created around 19,000 years ago, show a group of people walking together, including women potentially carrying babies. We see what appears to be a community on the move, a direct window into social organization. Some tracks reveal moments of drama. At White Sands, researchers found human footprints alongside those of a giant ground sloth, suggesting humans may have stalked these massive creatures. Other tracks show people seemingly running in soft mud, perhaps fleeing from danger. In Australia, 20,000-year-old footprints preserved in hardened mud show what appears to be a hunter running at extraordinary speed, faster than Olympic champions. This single set of tracks forces us to reconsider the physical capabilities of ancient peoples. Perhaps most poignantly, many sites around the world preserve the footprints of children playing, timeless moments of joy and curiosity that transcend the vast gulf of time separating us from our ancestors. The stakes of these discoveries extend beyond rewriting timelines and migration maps. They challenge us to see our ancestors as fully human, capable, adaptive, and ingenious in ways our conventional narratives often fail to acknowledge. If we've been wrong about when humans first reached Australia, the Americas, or Europe, what else might we be wrong about? What other capabilities and achievements have we underestimated? What other stories remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered? And there's a deeper implication. If our understanding of human origins and migrations has been incomplete, what does that mean for our models of human potential and adaptability today? Our past informs how we see our present and future. These fossilized footprints invite us to reconsider not just where we've been, but where we might be going. They remind us that our ancestors faced enormous challenges: ice ages, sea level changes, megafauna, and not only survived but thrived. In a time when humanity faces unprecedented global challenges, understanding the true extent of our ancestors' resilience and adaptability provides more than academic insight. It offers perspective on our own capacity for survival and innovation. Tonight, as we explore humanity's lost footprints, we're not just examining curious impressions in stone and mud. We're reassessing who we are, where we came from, and perhaps most importantly, what we're capable of becoming. Chapter 3: Walking through deep time to fully appreciate the mystery of ancient human footprints, we must first understand the extraordinary circumstances needed for their preservation. Under normal conditions, footprints last only hours or days before being erased by weather, tides, or subsequent travelers. For a footprint to survive millions, or even thousands, of years requires a perfect sequence of events. First, the ground must be receptive, soft enough to record the impression but firm enough to hold its shape. Volcanic ash, mud near drying, or wet sand often provide ideal surfaces. Then, the footprint must be rapidly preserved, typically by being covered with another layer of sediment before erosion destroys it. Over time, these layers harden through processes like cementation, where minerals bind the sediment particles together, essentially turning mud to stone. This process, called lithification, transforms the fragile impression into a fossil that can endure for millions of years. The footprint becomes a negative impression, with the actual foot shape appearing as a depression in the rock. Sometimes nature creates a natural cast of the footprint when the depression fills with different material that later hardens. These positive casts preserve the exact shape of the foot that made the original impression. The rarity of these perfect preservation conditions makes ancient human footprints exceptionally valuable to science. Each discovery represents a moment when all these factors aligned to preserve a fleeting interaction between a human foot and the earth. Our story begins in prehistoric Africa, the cradle of humanity, where the oldest known hominin footprints were discovered at Laetoli in Tanzania. These remarkable impressions date back 3.6 million years and were created by Australopithecus afarensis, the same species as the famous Lucy fossil. The Laetoli footprints were created when several individuals walked across a fresh layer of volcanic ash that had been dampened by rain. Another ash fall soon covered and preserved the tracks for millions of years until their discovery by Mary Leakey's team in 1976. What makes these footprints revolutionary is what they reveal about early human movement. The Laetoli tracks show conclusively that our ancestors were walking fully upright on two legs over 3.6 million years ago, much earlier than scientists had previously established. The tracks show a distinctly human gait pattern. The heel strikes first, followed by pressure along the outside of the foot, then across the ball, and finally a push-off from the toes. This modern walking style was previously thought to have evolved much later. More intriguing still, the Laetoli prints appear to show three individuals walking together, possibly a family group. One set of tracks suggests an individual carrying a child or stopping to look to the side, capturing a moment of behavior otherwise lost to time. For over a century before Leakey's discovery, scientists had debated when bipedalism, walking on two legs, evolved in the human lineage. The Laetoli footprints settled this debate decisively, proving that our ancestors walked upright long before developing larger brains. This sequence contradicted earlier theories that suggested brain development preceded upright walking. The footprints revealed that our evolutionary path began with standing up, freeing our hands for tool use, before our brains expanded significantly. Fast forward 2 million years to another remarkable site in Kenya. At Illirit, along the eastern shore of Lake Turkana, researchers found footprints made by Homo erectus approximately 1.5 million years ago. These prints reveal something extraordinary, feet essentially identical to our own. The Illirit tracks show a pronounced arch, short toes aligned with the foot axis, and a large big toe that parallels the other toes rather than splaying outward like an ape's. In other words, by 1.5 million years ago, our ancestors had already evolved feet anatomically indistinguishable from modern humans. This suggests they were capable of sustained running, an adaptation that may have been crucial for persistence hunting. The Illirit footprints also show evidence of groups moving together, possibly engaged in cooperative activities. They provide a remarkable window into the social behavior of early Homo erectus, suggesting a level of social organization previously only inferred from other archaeological evidence. Moving from Africa to Europe, we encounter the Hapesborough footprints in Norfolk, England. Discovered in 2013 and dated to roughly 800,000 years ago, they are the oldest human footprints found outside Africa. These prints were left by a group of early humans, likely Homo antecessor or Homo heidelbergensis, walking along an ancient estuary. The footprints included both adults and children, suggesting family groups were present in northern Europe far earlier than previously thought. The significance of Hapesborough cannot be overstated. Prior to this discovery, the earliest evidence for human presence in northern Europe dated to only about 500,000 years ago. These footprints pushed that timeline back by 300,000 years. Even more remarkably, they showed early humans venturing into cold northern climates long before the control of fire was thought to be widespread. This challenged assumptions about when humans developed the technological and physiological adaptations for cold environments. The Hapesborough prints were found in sediments that indicated a climate similar to modern southern Scandinavia, significantly colder than where early humans were thought to prefer. This suggested our ancestors were more adaptable than previously credited. Across the globe in Australia, ancient footprints tell another chapter of human migration and adaptation. The Willandra Lakes region preserves tracks dated to approximately 20,000 years ago, the largest collection of Pleistocene human footprints in the world. These Australian prints include over 700 human footprints, showing men, women, and children moving across the landscape. Among them are tracks of a one-legged man, possibly using a stick for support, perhaps the earliest evidence of physical disability and adaptation. Most dramatically, the Willandra prints include tracks of what appears to be a hunter running at remarkable speed, estimated at nearly 23 miles per hour. For comparison, Usain Bolt's top speed was just over 27 miles per hour. This challenges our perceptions of ancient physical capabilities. As we travel through these ancient landscapes, we begin to see a pattern. Footprints consistently reveal human capabilities and behaviors that exceed what we've inferred from bones and artifacts alone. They show us ancestors who were more mobile, more adaptable, and more socially complex. But these well-established discoveries are just the beginning of our story. The real mystery emerges when we encounter footprints that challenge not just the details of human evolution, but potentially its entire framework. Chapter 4. Impossible footprints. As remarkable as the well-accepted footprint discoveries are, they at least fit within the established framework of human evolution and migration. But scattered across the globe are other alleged ancient footprints that, if authentic, would completely shatter our understanding of human history. Consider the case that erupted in scientific circles in 2017, when researchers reported hominin-like footprints on the Greek island of Crete dating to approximately 5.7 million years ago. These prints showed distinctly human characteristics, an upright, bipedal gait with a big toe in line with the others. The controversial implication was enormous. If correctly dated and identified, these footprints would place human-like bipedal creatures in Europe 1.5 million years before the oldest known hominin footprints in Africa, challenging the entire out-of-Africa model of human evolution. Led by paleontologist Gerard Jerlinski, the research team suggested these tracks might belong to a previously unknown hominin species that had evolved bipedalism independently in Europe. This hypothesis sent shockwaves through the paleoanthropological community. Critics immediately questioned both the dating methods and whether the impressions were truly footprints at all. Some suggested they might be strange geological formations or even the tracks of other animals distorted by natural processes over millions of years. The debate surrounding the Tracalo's footprints, as they're known, exemplifies the fierce controversy that surrounds impossible footprint discoveries. When tracks appear where or when they shouldn't be, the scientific establishment often reacts with extreme skepticism. Yet the Tracalo's prints remain difficult to dismiss entirely. They display anatomical features consistent with hominin feet, including a ball region, a distinct arch, and 5 clearly distinguishable toes with the big toe parallel to the others rather than divergent like an ape's. Moving from ancient Europe to the Americas, we encounter equally perplexing evidence. In the Paluxy River bed near Glen Rose, Texas, limestone layers dating to approximately 110 million years ago contain what some claim are human footprints alongside dinosaur tracks. If authentic, these prints would place humans on Earth more than 100 million years before our species evolved, an impossibility according to all established evolutionary science. Most paleontologists firmly reject these as human tracks, identifying them instead as eroded dinosaur footprints. Yet proponents point to specific prints that appear to show human-like features, including a distinct arch and 5 toes. Some tracks even seem to show detailed toe impressions and foot contours that, they argue, cannot be explained as dinosaur tracks or erosion patterns. The controversy intensified in the 1930s when locals reportedly removed sections of track-bearing limestone containing the most human-like prints. Some of these removed tracks were claimed to show clear toe impressions, pronounced arches, and accurate human proportions. Similar claims have emerged from other locations. In Nevada, apparent shoe prints in trilobite-bearing strata would date human presence to over 200 million years ago. In Utah, alleged human tracks were reported in 150-million-year-old Jurassic formations. The scientific consensus firmly rejects these as misinterpretations of natural phenomena or outright fabrications. Yet they persist in the literature of alternative archaeology, challenging conventional timelines and occasionally prompting renewed scientific investigation. Even within the more recent archaeological record, anomalous footprints continue to emerge. On Calvert Island in British Columbia, human footprints dated to approximately 13,000 years ago reveal human presence along the Pacific coast during the last ice age. While not as dramatically out of place as the purported dinosaur-era tracks, these prints still challenge traditional models of how and when humans first populated the Americas. They support a coastal migration route at a time when interior passages were blocked by ice sheets. Then came the bombshell discovery at White Sands National Park in New Mexico. In 2021, researchers confirmed human footprints dating to between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, several thousand years earlier than humans were thought to have reached North America. The White Sands footprints weren't just slightly earlier than expected. They demolished the prevailing Clovis first model that had dominated North American archaeology for decades, which held that humans arrived no earlier than about 13,500 years ago. These tracks showed people walking along an ancient lakeshore, including children playing in puddles. The dating, using radiocarbon methods on aquatic plant seeds embedded in the layers, has been rigorously verified through multiple independent analyses. What makes the White Sands discovery so significant is that it places humans in the heart of North America during the height of the last glacial maximum, when massive ice sheets should have made such migration extremely difficult, if not impossible. This forces archaeologists to reconsider not just when humans arrived in the Americas, but how they got there. If people were present before and during the peak of the last ice age, they likely followed different routes than previously theorized. The scientific community has largely accepted the White Sands evidence, despite its revolutionary implications. This acceptance stands in stark contrast to the rejection of more extreme claims like the Paluxy man tracks, highlighting the difference between evidence that modifies our understanding versus that which would overturn it entirely. Yet the boundary between acceptable revision and revolutionary overthrow is not always clear. In 1974, fossils of a female hominin were discovered in Ethiopia. Named Lucy, this Australopithecus afarensis lived 3.2 million years ago and walked upright. revolutionizing our understanding of human evolution. When Mary Leakey discovered the Laetoli footprints showing upright walking 3.6 million years ago, the scientific community accepted this evidence because it extended existing knowledge rather than contradicting fundamental principles. The footprints pushed back bipedalism but didn't challenge its African origins. The pattern becomes clear: footprint evidence that extends or modifies existing paradigms, even significantly, can eventually gain acceptance. Evidence that would require abandoning core theories entirely faces much higher scrutiny, perhaps rightfully so. But this pattern raises an important question. How do we distinguish between evidence that genuinely challenges incorrect paradigms and evidence that can be dismissed as misinterpretation or fraud? How do we avoid dismissing revolutionary discoveries simply because they're revolutionary? Throughout scientific history, truly paradigm-shifting discoveries have often faced intense initial skepticism. Continental drift, bacterial causes of ulcers, and many other now-accepted theories were first rejected as impossible or absurd by the scientific establishment. As we continue our exploration of humanity's lost footprints, we must maintain this tension between healthy skepticism and open-minded inquiry. The footprints that seem impossible today might represent tomorrow's scientific revelations, or they might indeed be misinterpretations. What if some of the more controversial footprint discoveries contain elements of truth? What if human evolution and migration followed paths far more complex than our current models suggest? The implications would reverberate through every aspect of our understanding of human origins. Consider the Delmarva footprints, discovered along Chesapeake Bay and initially dated to around 28,000 years ago. If verified, these would push human presence in North America back even further than the White Sands tracks, requiring yet another rewriting of prehistory. Initial excitement over these prints has given way to controversy, with some researchers questioning both their human origin and their dating. Are they truly human footprints, or natural formations that merely resemble them? The debate continues. As we stand at this crossroads of evidence and interpretation, a larger pattern emerges. Our understanding of human evolution and migration has been repeatedly revised as new footprint evidence comes to light. The story of where we came from and how we spread across the planet continues to evolve. What secrets might still lie buried in ancient sediments, waiting to be uncovered? What footprints of our ancestors have yet to be found that might once again transform our understanding of human origins? And how will we know truth from misinterpretation when we find them? Chapter 5. The Dating Dilemma. As we venture deeper into our exploration of ancient footprints, we encounter a fundamental challenge that haunts every controversial discovery: the problem of accurate dating. How do we determine when these fleeting moments were captured in stone? The methodologies used to date ancient footprints are sophisticated but imperfect. Radiometric dating techniques like potassium-argon dating work well for volcanic materials but are useless for many sedimentary rocks where footprints are typically found. Radiocarbon dating, while precise for organic materials, only works reliably to about 50,000 years ago and requires organic material associated with the prints. For many sites, scientists must rely on dating the surrounding geological layers. This creates a critical vulnerability. If the stratigraphic context is misunderstood or if the layers have been disturbed over time, the entire chronological framework can collapse. Many controversial footprint discoveries hinge on exactly this point of contention. Take the mysterious prints found in the Carson City prison yard in Nevada in 1882. Workers excavating for a prison foundation uncovered what appeared to be human footprints in stone. The tracks showed remarkable detail, with clear impressions of the ball, arch, and heel. The controversy emerged when geologists determined the sandstone layer containing these prints dated to the Triassic period, over 200 million years ago. Such dating would place humans on Earth alongside early dinosaurs, long before even our earliest primate ancestors evolved. Mainstream scientists dismissed the prints as either natural formations coincidentally resembling footprints or as fabrications. Yet some researchers continue to question whether the dating itself might be flawed or whether the prints might represent something entirely unknown to science. Similar dating controversies surround the Laetoli prints in Tanzania. While widely accepted as authentic 3.6-million-year-old hominin footprints, some researchers have questioned whether the volcanic tuff in which they're preserved might have been misdated. The White Sands footprints faced similar scrutiny. Initial skepticism centered on whether the radiocarbon dating of plant seeds in the layers might have been contaminated or whether the seeds themselves might have been older than the footprints they accompanied. These dating challenges become even more pronounced with the most controversial discoveries. The alleged human tracks alongside dinosaur prints in the Paluxy Riverbed in Texas should be approximately 110 million years old based on the surrounding rock layers. If accurate, this dating would completely overturn not just human evolution, but our understanding of mammalian evolution entirely. No wonder mainstream paleontologists have sought alternative explanations, suggesting the human prints are actually eroded dinosaur tracks. Yet defenders of these controversial prints insist the clear toe impressions, distinct arches, and human-like proportions cannot be explained away so easily. They argue that preconceived notions about human evolution have blinded scientists to evidence that contradicts established timelines. This pattern repeats globally. In Turkey, apparent footprints in Cretaceous limestone would date human presence to over 100 million years ago. In Turkmenistan, alleged human tracks appear in layers containing dinosaur footprints from the Jurassic period. Are all these cases simple misidentifications of natural formations? Examples of pareidolia, the tendency to perceive significant patterns in random data? Or could some represent genuine anomalies that challenge our understanding of the past? The dating dilemma extends beyond extreme cases. Even within conventional timeframes, precise dating remains contentious. The Haysborough footprints in England, dated to approximately 800,000 years ago, pushed back human presence in northern Europe by hundreds of thousands of years. Initial skepticism about these prints focused partly on dating methods. Without directly datable materials, scientists relied on paleomagnetic dating and biostratigraphy, methods that some critics considered insufficient for such a revolutionary claim. A similar controversy emerged with footprints discovered at Illirit in Kenya. Initially dated to about 1.5 million years ago, these impressions have faced questions about whether they might be considerably younger, which would significantly alter their place in the human evolutionary timeline. Dating controversies highlight a fundamental challenge in interpreting ancient footprints, the tension between evidence and established theory. When prints appear too early, according to existing models, the debate centers on whether the dating is wrong or our models need revision. This tension is amplified by the fact that footprints themselves are difficult to authenticate definitively. Unlike fossils, which can be studied through microscopic examination and chemical analysis, footprints present fewer opportunities for absolute verification. The identification of genuine footprints versus natural formations that merely resemble them requires expertise in both human anatomy and sedimentology. Even experts sometimes disagree about whether particular impressions represent actual footprints. Consider the Guadalupe woman, a skeleton discovered in 1812 embedded in limestone that was initially believed to be 28 million years old. This finding briefly challenged evolutionary timelines until further analysis revealed the limestone was actually a form of beach rock that formed relatively recently. Similar reassessments have occurred with purported ancient footprints. What initially appears to be a human track might, under closer scrutiny, reveal characteristics inconsistent with human anatomy or show evidence of natural geological processes mimicking footprint features. Yet dismissing controversial evidence carries its own risks. Throughout scientific history, anomalous findings initially rejected by the mainstream have occasionally proven to be breakthrough discoveries that forced paradigm shifts in our understanding. The continental drift theory proposed by Alfred Wegener in 1912 was ridiculed for decades before becoming accepted as plate tectonics in the 1960s. Could some currently dismissed footprint evidence eventually force similar revisions to human evolutionary timelines? This tension between evidence and theory creates a fundamental paradox in studying ancient footprints. The most potentially significant discoveries, those that might revolutionize our understanding, face the greatest skepticism precisely because of their revolutionary implications. Adding to this complexity is the problem of preservation bias. Footprints preserve only in specific environmental conditions, creating an incomplete and potentially misleading record. we cannot know how representative our footprint discoveries are of actual human presence and migration. Areas with ideal preservation conditions, like volcanic regions with ash falls or shorelines with rapidly hardening mud, may appear more significant in the archaeological record simply because they preserve evidence better, not because they were more important to human evolution. Similarly, regions with active geological processes that expose ancient layers, like river erosion or coastal weathering, yield more discoveries than places where ancient footprints might remain deeply buried and inaccessible. This preservation bias creates potential blind spots in our understanding. Human migration routes through regions with poor preservation conditions might remain invisible in the footprint record, leading to incomplete or inaccurate models of how our ancestors moved across the planet. The dating dilemma and preservation bias together create a perfect storm of uncertainty. We cannot be sure we've found the oldest footprints in any region, only the oldest that happen to have been both preserved and discovered. Yet despite these challenges, the study of ancient footprints continues to yield invaluable insights. Even with imperfect dating and incomplete preservation, these frozen moments in time provide direct evidence of presence and behavior that bones and artifacts alone cannot. As we continue our journey through humanity's lost footprints, we must hold these contradictions in mind, acknowledging both the limitations of our methods and the tantalizing possibilities that controversial discoveries might eventually prove revolutionary. Chapter 6: Footprints in Myth and Legend. Throughout human history, long before the emergence of modern archaeology, cultures worldwide preserved stories about giant footprints, strange tracks, and the paths of ancestors or gods impressed upon the land. These myths often contain kernels of historical truth wrapped in layers of cultural meaning. In Australia, Aboriginal songlines describe the journeys of creator beings who left their marks on the landscape. These Dreamtime stories often correspond to actual geological features, including what Western science now recognizes as ancient human migration routes across the continent. The rainbow serpent, a creator being in Aboriginal mythology, is said to have left behind enormous winding tracks as it moved across the land. Some anthropologists suggest these myths might preserve memories of megafauna that coexisted with early human inhabitants of Australia. Similarly, many Native American tribes preserve stories of giant tracks left in stone. The Paiute speak of witches' footprints in Nevada, depressions in rock that legend attributes to ancient shamans, but which geologists identify as natural formations or, in some cases, authentic fossil tracks. The Hopi traditions include stories of previous worlds and the migrations that brought their ancestors to their current homeland. These oral histories describe specific routes and landmarks that, in some cases, align with archaeological evidence of ancient settlement patterns. Across the Pacific, Hawaiian mythology speaks of the goddess Pele leaving footprints in newly cooled lava flows. While obviously mythologized, these stories reflect the actual phenomenon of human footprints preserved in volcanic materials, a scientifically documented occurrence. In Europe, medieval Christians venerated supposed footprints of Jesus, saints, or the devil preserved in stone. While these religious attributions can be dismissed, the underlying impressions themselves sometimes represent genuine ancient human or animal tracks that were later incorporated into religious narratives. The devil's footprints that appeared overnight in Devon, England, in 1855 represent a more recent case of mysterious tracks entering folklore. After a snowfall, residents discovered a line of hoof-like impressions stretching over 100 miles, crossing walls and rooftops. While various natural explanations have been proposed for the Devon incident, from hopping mice to airborne seeds, it demonstrates how unexplained tracks rapidly become incorporated into cultural mythology. The tracks were widely attributed to Satan, reflecting prevailing beliefs of the time. These folkloric footprints remind us that humans have always sought meaning in the traces left on the landscape. Long before scientific dating methods or archaeological frameworks, people recognized the significance of preserved tracks and built explanatory narratives around them. This intersection of myth and science becomes particularly interesting when we consider out-of-place footprint discoveries, finds that challenge established scientific narratives about when and where humans or their ancestors lived. Consider the intriguing case of the Sasquatch Highway in the mountains of Washington state. Native American traditions speak of a route frequented by Sasquatch, Bigfoot, that corresponds to an actual game trail used by deer, elk, and occasionally humans. While mainstream science rejects Sasquatch as a cryptid without supporting evidence, the indigenous stories about this path preserve knowledge about actual wildlife movements through the region, knowledge accumulated through generations of observation. Similarly, legends of giant footprints found throughout the Pacific Islands often correspond to actual depressions in rock formations. While folklore attributes these to enormous ancient beings, geologists typically identify them as natural features formed through erosion or volcanic activity. Yet dismissing all such stories as mere myth risks overlooking valuable information they might contain. Throughout history, myths have occasionally led archaeologists to genuine discoveries that might otherwise have remained hidden. Heinrich Schliemann's discovery of Troy was guided partly by taking Homer's Iliad seriously as potentially containing historical information. Similarly, some footprint discoveries have been made by researchers following leads from local folklore about giant tracks or devil's footprints. This brings us to one of archaeology's most persistent controversies, the so-called out-of-place artifacts, or OOPArts, objects, structures, or in our case, footprints, that appear in contexts challenging established chronologies. The alleged human footprints alongside dinosaur tracks in the Paluxy River bed represent a classic example. Mainstream science categorically rejects their authenticity as human prints, yet they persist in alternative archaeology literature as potential evidence that humans coexisted with dinosaurs. Similar claims have emerged about apparent shoe prints found in coal seams dating back millions of years, footprint-like impressions in ancient stone that show detailed sole patterns, and even what some interpret as sandal prints in Precambrian rock. The mainstream scientific response to these claims typically follows several lines of argument. First, that the prints are misidentified natural formations. Second, that dating errors have occurred. Third, that in some cases, deliberate hoaxes may be involved. Yet proponents of these controversial finds argue that dismissing them wholesale represents a form of scientific dogmatism, an unwillingness to consider evidence that contradicts established paradigms, no matter how compelling that evidence might appear. This tension between established theory and anomalous evidence creates a fascinating dynamic in the study of ancient footprints. How do we distinguish between legitimate challenges to current understanding and misinterpretations or fabrications? The criteria used by mainstream scientists include reproducibility, multiple lines of evidence, theoretical plausibility, and peer review. Extraordinary claims, they argue, require extraordinary evidence, especially when those claims would overturn well-established scientific frameworks. Yet history shows that paradigm shifts in science often begin with anomalous findings that don't fit existing theories. The question becomes, are some impossible footprint discoveries the beginnings of a paradigm shift, or simply errors of identification or dating? One of the most intriguing cases involves the Haysborough footprints in England. Initially considered impossible by many archaeologists, these 800,000-year-old impressions eventually gained scientific acceptance after multiple lines of evidence confirmed both their authenticity and dating. The White Sands footprints in New Mexico followed a similar path, from initial skepticism about their age to gradual acceptance after rigorous verification through multiple dating methods. They've now pushed back human presence in North America by thousands of years. These examples suggest that even dramatic revisions to established timelines can gain acceptance when the evidence is sufficiently robust. But they also highlight the high standards of proof required for findings that challenge mainstream chronologies. The most controversial footprint discoveries face an even higher bar, particularly those that would place humans alongside dinosaurs or tens of millions of years before our species evolved. Such findings would require a complete rewriting of not just human evolution, but much of evolutionary biology. Yet the persistence of these controversies raises important questions about how science handles potentially paradigm-shifting discoveries. Is the high threshold for accepting revolutionary evidence appropriate scientific caution or institutional resistance to change? The history of science suggests both dynamics operate simultaneously. Legitimate skepticism protects against premature acceptance of flawed findings, while institutional inertia sometimes delays recognition of genuine breakthroughs. For those studying ancient footprints, this creates a challenging landscape. Researchers must navigate between open-minded exploration of anomalous findings and rigorous scientific standards that protect against misidentification and misinterpretation. This tension becomes particularly acute when footprint discoveries intersect with deeply held cultural or religious beliefs. The Paluxy man tracks, for instance, gained prominence partly because they appeared to support young Earth creationist perspectives challenging evolutionary timelines. Similarly, some indigenous communities view certain footprint sites as sacred ancestral evidence, sometimes interpreting them within cultural frameworks that differ from Western scientific chronologies. Navigating these intersections requires both scientific rigor and cultural sensitivity. As we continue exploring humanity's lost footprints, we must hold these complexities in mind, acknowledging that myths may contain historical insights, that science itself evolves through challenging established paradigms, and that the most significant discoveries often begin as anomalies. Chapter 7. Retracing our steps. As we've journeyed through the evidence of humanity's ancient footprints, a profound realization emerges. The stakes of these discoveries extend far beyond academic debates about dating methods or identification criteria. They fundamentally challenge how we understand our own story. If the most conservative interpretations of the footprint record are correct, human evolution and migration followed a relatively straightforward path. Our ancestors evolved in Africa, gradually developed modern anatomy and behaviors, and then dispersed across the globe in predictable waves. But if even some of the more controversial footprint discoveries prove authentic, this tidy narrative disintegrates. Human evolution might have followed multiple concurrent paths. Our ancestors might have reached distant continents far earlier than currently believed. And if the most radical interpretations were somehow validated, those placing human-like prints alongside dinosaurs or in geological epochs before primates existed, our entire understanding of evolutionary biology would require complete reconstruction. This spectrum of possibilities creates a unique tension in the study of ancient footprints. Each new discovery has the potential to either reinforce our current understanding or shatter it entirely, depending on its authenticity and interpretation. Consider the White Sands footprints. By pushing human presence in North America back to 23,000 years ago, they've already forced substantial revisions to migration models. But what if humans were present even earlier? Recent controversial claims of 130,000-year-old butchered mastodon bones in California suggest precisely this possibility. Though widely rejected by mainstream archaeologists, these claims highlight how drastically our understanding could change if evidence of earlier human presence were confirmed. The implications extend beyond rewriting timelines. If humans reached the Americas during the last ice age when massive glaciers should have blocked interior routes, they must have possessed maritime technologies far more sophisticated than previously credited to Pleistocene peoples. Similarly, the Haysborough footprints in England suggest early humans adapted to northern European climates hundreds of thousands of years earlier than once thought. This challenges assumptions about when our ancestors developed technological and physiological adaptations for cold environments. Each of these revisions forces us to reconsider human capabilities in the distant past. Were our ancestors more technologically advanced, more adaptable, or more mobile than our current models suggest? Did they possess knowledge and skills that have left no trace in the archaeological record? The footprint evidence consistently points toward greater complexity in human evolution and migration than simpler models based primarily on fossil remains. Footprints reveal behavior and movement in ways bones alone cannot. At Illirit in Kenya, 1.5 million year old footprints show Homo erectus walking with a modern human gait and foot anatomy. This suggests complete adaptation to bipedal locomotion much earlier than some had proposed based on skeletal remains alone. The Laetoli footprints in Tanzania demonstrate that Australopithecus afarensis walked upright with a human-like gait 3.6 million years ago, long before significant brain enlargement occurred. This fundamentally altered our understanding of the sequence of human evolutionary adaptations. More recent discoveries continue this pattern of revision. Footprints dated to about 120,000 years ago found on an ancient lake surface in the Nefud Desert of Saudi Arabia demonstrate human presence in an area previously thought uninhabitable during that period. These Saudi Arabian prints reveal humans moving through what is now harsh desert during a brief wet period, suggesting our ancestors opportunistically expanded their range whenever climate conditions allowed, a level of adaptability and mobility not previously recognized. At Ungar Siro in Tanzania, 19,000-year-old footprints preserved in volcanic ash show what appears to be a social group in motion, including what researchers interpret as women, men, and children traveling together across a landscape. These prints provide direct evidence of social organization and group movement that would be impossible to determine from fossil remains or artifacts alone. They offer a glimpse into the daily lives and behaviors of our ancestors that dramatically humanizes them. As footprint discoveries accumulate globally, they consistently reveal greater complexity, earlier capabilities, and more extensive migrations than previously established models suggested. The cumulative effect is a profound revision of human prehistory. Yet this pattern raises a troubling question. If our understanding has required such significant revisions based on footprint evidence discovered thus far, what other aspects of human prehistory might we be fundamentally misunderstanding due to incomplete evidence? What if the impossible footprints that mainstream science currently rejects eventually prove authentic through new dating methods or analytical techniques? How many times must we rewrite human prehistory before we acknowledge the limitations of our current frameworks? This is the escalating stake of footprint research, not just refining dates or migration routes, but potentially recognizing that our entire approach to human origins requires fundamental reconsideration. The tension between established theory and new evidence creates what philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn called the conditions for a paradigm shift, when anomalous findings accumulate to the point where existing frameworks become untenable and new models must emerge. Are we approaching such a paradigm shift in our understanding of human origins and migrations? The footprint evidence suggests, at minimum, that our ancestors were more mobile, more adaptable, and more widely distributed than previously recognized. But the most controversial footprint discoveries hint at something far more radical: the possibility that human-like creatures may have existed in times or places completely inconsistent with current evolutionary models. The Trakalos footprints in Crete, dated to 5.7 million years ago, exemplify this challenge. If authentic and correctly dated, they suggest bipedal, human-like creatures in Europe at a time when conventional models place our earliest ancestors exclusively in Africa. Similarly, footprints reportedly found in the Himalayas dating to the Miocene epoch would place human-like creatures in Asia millions of years before Homo sapiens evolved. Mainstream science dismisses these claims, but they persist in the literature of alternative archaeology. What makes footprints particularly powerful as evidence is their direct documentation of presence and behavior. Unlike artifacts that might be misidentified or moved from their original context, a genuine footprint represents an irrefutable moment of contact between foot and earth. This quality makes authentic footprint discoveries nearly impossible to dismiss within their proper geological context. If the dating is secure and the identification as a human or hominin print is valid, the implications must be confronted regardless of how they challenge existing frameworks. The history of paleoanthropology suggests we should remain open to dramatic revisions. When Raymond Dart first identified the Tong child as an early hominin in 1924, his findings were initially rejected by the scientific establishment, which believed human origins lay in Europe or Asia. Decades later, Dart's identification was vindicated, and Africa is now recognized as humanity's birthplace. This historical example reminds us that even fundamental aspects of human origins have been subject to complete reversal based on new evidence. Could we be approaching another such reversal? The accumulating footprint evidence consistently points toward earlier dates, wider distributions, and more complex behaviors than previously established models accommodated. The most extreme possibility, that some impossible footprints might eventually prove authentic, would force a complete reconsideration of not just human evolution, but potentially the entire standard geological timeline. While mainstream science rightfully applies extraordinary scrutiny to such extraordinary claims, the history of science cautions against dismissing anomalous evidence simply because it contradicts established theories. As we stand at this crossroads of conflicting evidence and interpretation, one thing becomes clear. The story of human origins and migrations is far from settled. Each new footprint discovery has the potential to rewrite our understanding in unexpected ways. What if the next discovery pushes human presence in Australia back another 20,000 years? What if conclusive evidence emerges of humans in South America 30,000 years ago? What if new dating methods validate currently rejected claims of much earlier hominin presence? The answers to these questions will not just add details to our human story. They may fundamentally transform how we understand ourselves and our place in the long saga of life on Earth. As we follow these ancient footprints, we walk a path of discovery that may lead to destinations we cannot yet imagine, places where the conventional wisdom of today gives way to the revolutionary insights of tomorrow. Chapter 8. Mapping the impossible. As we approach the climax of our exploration into humanity's ancient footprints, we must confront the competing theories that attempt to explain the most controversial discoveries. Three primary frameworks have emerged, each offering a distinct perspective on these puzzling impressions left in stone. The first and most conservative theory is the misidentification hypothesis. This perspective, favored by mainstream paleontologists and archaeologists, suggests that the most controversial footprints are simply not human footprints at all, but rather natural geological formations or animal tracks. Proponents point to numerous documented cases where erosion, mineral deposits, or peculiar weathering patterns have created rock formations remarkably similar to footprints. The human tendency toward pareidolia, seeing meaningful patterns in random data, explains our misinterpretation of these natural phenomena. Dr. Martin Laetoli, a leading ichnologist from the University of Colorado, has demonstrated how dinosaur tracks can appear surprisingly human-like when partially eroded. The three-toed footprint of certain theropod dinosaurs can, under specific erosion patterns, resemble a human footprint. Similarly, the tracks of bears walking on their hind legs can create impressions that casual observers might mistake for human footprints. Without careful analysis of stride length, foot anatomy, and pressure distribution, such misidentifications can appear convincing even to trained eyes. This hypothesis easily accommodates the most extreme anomalies, like the alleged human tracks alongside dinosaur prints in the Paluxy River bed. No paradigm shift is required, just a recognition of our human tendency to see familiar patterns in natural formations. The second framework, the dating error theory, accepts that many controversial prints are indeed footprints made by humans or human ancestors, but suggests that errors in dating methodology have placed them in incorrect geological contexts. This theory acknowledges the difficulty of accurately dating footprint-bearing strata, particularly when the prints themselves cannot be directly dated. Instead, scientists must rely on dating surrounding materials or geological layers, introducing potential sources of error. Dr. Rebecca Fenton of Oxford University points to documented cases where geological processes have created misleading contexts. Intrusion events, where newer material penetrates older layers, can create the illusion that artifacts or prints are much older than they actually are, she explains. Similarly, the process of geological uplift and exposure can bring ancient layers to the surface, allowing relatively recent footprints to become associated with much older geological contexts. Without meticulous stratigraphic analysis, such associations can lead to dramatic misdating. This theory accounts for footprints that appear authentic but impossibly ancient. It preserves the established evolutionary timeline while acknowledging that some controversial prints might indeed be genuine human tracks, just not as old as they initially appear. The third and most radical framework is the paradigm challenge theory. This perspective suggests that at least some anomalous footprint discoveries are both authentic and correctly dated, requiring a fundamental revision of our understanding of human evolution and prehistoric migration. Proponents argue that the repeated pattern of footprint discoveries pushing back established timelines, like the White Sands prints extending human presence in North America to 23,000 years ago, suggests our current models remain incomplete. Dr. James Whitmore, a controversial figure in paleoanthropology, argues that science advances by investigating anomalies, not by dismissing them. The history of human origins research is filled with discoveries initially rejected because they didn't fit existing paradigms. This theory doesn't necessarily validate extreme claims of human footprints millions of years out of place. Rather, it suggests our evolutionary timeline may be significantly more complex than current models propose, with earlier bipedalism, multiple concurrent evolutionary paths, and more extensive migrations. The paradigm challenge theory points to historically validated scientific revolutions that began with anomalous evidence. Continental drift was ridiculed for decades before becoming accepted as plate tectonics. The ancient age of Earth was once considered heretical. Each of these frameworks offers different interpretations of the same physical evidence. The misidentification hypothesis sees natural formations mistaken for footprints. The dating error theory sees genuine footprints incorrectly placed in time. The paradigm challenge sees authentic discoveries requiring new models. Interestingly, different types of controversial footprint discoveries tend to align with different explanatory frameworks. The most extreme anomalies, like purported human prints alongside dinosaurs, find their most plausible explanation in the misidentification hypothesis. Prints that appear genuinely human but impossibly ancient, like the alleged 200-million-year-old shoe print in trilobite-bearing strata, might be best explained by dating errors or geological displacements that created misleading contexts. But what about discoveries like the Trachelose footprints in Crete? Dated to 5.7 million years ago, they show distinctly hominin characteristics, yet appear in Europe long before our current models place human ancestors outside Africa. These intermediate cases present the most intriguing challenges. Too well documented to dismiss as simple misidentifications, too carefully dated to attribute to obvious methodological errors, they inhabit a gray area that potentially demands paradigm revision. The White Sands footprints demonstrate how this process unfolds in real time. Initially met with skepticism because they contradicted the Clovis first model of American settlement, multiple dating methods and careful analysis eventually forced a revision of accepted timelines. This pattern, initial rejection followed by gradual acceptance as evidence accumulates, characterizes how science responds to anomalous discoveries. The question becomes, which currently rejected footprint findings might undergo similar reevaluation as methods improve. The tension between competing explanatory frameworks reflects a broader tension in science between conservatism and innovation. Established theories resist revision, requiring substantial evidence to overturn existing models, a necessary skepticism that prevents premature paradigm shifts. Yet this same conservative tendency can sometimes delay recognition of genuine breakthroughs. The history of paleoanthropology includes numerous examples of significant discoveries initially dismissed because they contradicted prevailing wisdom. When Raymond Dart identified the Tong child as an early human ancestor in 1924, his findings were rejected by a scientific establishment convinced that human origins lay in Europe or Asia. Decades passed before Africa was recognized as humanity's birthplace. Similarly, when Lewis and Mary Leakey uncovered Zinjanthropus, now Paranthropus, boisé at Oldaway Gorge in 1959, many doubted its significance. Today, their discoveries are cornerstone findings in human evolutionary studies. These historical examples remind us that today's scientific consensus emerged through a process of challenging previous models. They counsel humility when confronting anomalous evidence like unexplained ancient footprints. As we navigate these competing interpretations, one conclusion becomes clear. The study of ancient footprints has consistently expanded and revised our understanding of human evolution and migration, often in unexpected directions. Whether through correcting misidentifications, improving dating methodologies, or occasionally revising fundamental models, the evidence of humanity's ancient tracks continues to refine our understanding of where we came from and how we spread across the planet. Chapter 9. New Frontiers in Footprint Science. The science of ancient footprint analysis has undergone a remarkable transformation in recent years. New technologies and methodologies have revolutionized how researchers identify, date, and interpret these fleeting impressions preserved in stone, mud, and volcanic ash. Perhaps the most significant advancement has been the application of 3D photogrammetry and laser scanning. These technologies create detailed, three-dimensional models of footprint sites, capturing subtle details invisible to the naked eye and allowing analysis long after the physical prints may have deteriorated. Dr. Matthew Bennett of Bournemouth University pioneered these techniques at White Sands National Park, creating precise digital models of the 23,000-year-old footprints found there. These models revealed pressure patterns and anatomical details that confirmed their human origin. We can now see precisely how the foot interacted with the substrate, explains Bennett. The way weight transfers from heel to toe, the pressure distribution across the foot. These details are like fingerprints for identifying who made the tracks. These digital techniques allow for unprecedented preservation of fragile discoveries. Many footprint sites, once exposed, quickly deteriorate due to weather exposure. 3D documentation creates permanent records that researchers worldwide can study without risking the original impressions. Equally revolutionary has been the refinement of dating methodologies. New approaches like optically stimulated luminescence, OSL, dating can determine when sediments were last exposed to sunlight, helping date the layers in which footprints are found. Cosmogenic nuclide dating measures the accumulation of isotopes formed when cosmic rays interact with Earth's surface, providing another independent method for dating exposed rock surfaces that might contain ancient footprints. These advanced dating techniques have transformed debates about controversial footprints. Multiple independent dating methods can now be applied to the same site, creating more robust chronologies and reducing the likelihood of systematic errors. At White Sands, researchers used radiocarbon dating of aquatic plant seeds found in the same layers as the footprints, confirming their age through multiple samples. This methodological rigor helped overcome initial skepticism about their pre-Clovis date. Another frontier involves the application of artificial intelligence to footprint identification. Machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of known human, primate, and other animal footprints can now help distinguish genuine hominin tracks from natural formations or other animal impressions. These AI systems detect subtle patterns in depth, pressure distribution, and anatomical proportions that distinguish true footprints from pseudofossils, natural formations that merely resemble footprints. They provide an objective complement to expert human assessment. DNA analysis has created another revolutionary dimension in footprint studies. In some exceptionally preserved sites, researchers have successfully extracted environmental DNA, EDNA, from the sediments containing footprints, revealing the biological context in which the tracks were made. At Monte Hermoso in Argentina, 12,000-year-old human footprints were found alongside microscopic evidence of the flora and fauna present when those humans walked along an ancient shoreline. This creates a comprehensive ecological snapshot of a specific moment in prehistory. Perhaps most intriguing is the emerging field of forensic podiatry applied to ancient footprints. By analyzing the unique gait patterns preserved in track sequences, researchers can sometimes determine not just the species, but potential information about age, sex, and even physical condition. The way we walk is as individual as our fingerprints, explains forensic podiatrist Dr. Sarah Reeves. From footprint trails, we can identify individuals within a group, distinguish adults from juveniles, and sometimes even recognize specific pathologies or injuries. These advanced analytical techniques have revealed surprising insights from famous footprint sites. Reanalysis of the Laetoli tracks using pressure mapping techniques suggested that Australopithecus afarensis walked with a more modern, efficient gait than previously thought. Similarly, detailed analysis of the Haysborough footprints in England revealed that the individuals who made them had foot anatomy remarkably similar to modern humans, despite being nearly 800,000 years old and likely belonging to Homo antecessor. These technological advances create a fascinating paradox. As our ability to identify and analyze ancient footprints improves, we discover both more answers and more questions. Better data often reveals greater complexity rather than simpler resolution. For instance, improved dating of Australian footprint sites has confirmed human presence there by at least 50,000 years ago, but new genetic studies suggest Aboriginal Australians may have been isolated from other populations for up to 80,000 years, creating a chronological puzzle. Similarly, the precisely dated White Sands footprints confirm humans in North America 23,000 years ago, But how did they get there? The traditional Beringia land bridge was likely impassable due to ice sheets at that time, suggesting maritime capabilities not previously attributed to Ice Age peoples. These paradoxes illustrate a recurring pattern in the study of ancient human footprints. As dating becomes more precise and identification more certain, the implications often become more challenging to establish narratives rather than less. Perhaps the most profound paradox emerges when we consider what footprints reveal about ancient human behavior compared to other archaeological evidence. Footprints capture moments of daily life: walking, running, gathering, hunting, that artifact assemblages rarely illustrate so directly. At Ungar Siro in Tanzania, 19,000-year-old footprints show what appears to be a social group in motion, with different-sized tracks suggesting men, women, and children traveling together. This direct glimpse of social organization complements, but sometimes contradicts inferences from material remains. In some cases, footprints reveal behaviors otherwise invisible in the archaeological record. At White Sands, tracks show children playing in mud puddles, people carrying heavy objects, and possibly even hunting strategies, intimate behavioral details no stone tool or hearth could reveal. These behavioral insights create another paradox. Footprints sometimes suggest capabilities and activities more advanced or complex than we would infer from contemporary material culture alone. They hint at a richness of behavior that other archaeological evidence may systematically underrepresent. Consider the 7,000-year-old footprints found inside Grotta dei Cervi cave in Italy, showing children accompanied by adults moving through deep, narrow passages. These prints reveal intentional exploration of dangerous subterranean environments, a behavior difficult to detect through artifacts alone. The emerging picture suggests that ancient footprints may preserve a layer of human behavior largely invisible in traditional archaeological evidence. The ephemeral activities of daily life, movement patterns, and social groupings that leave no material trace beyond momentary impressions in soft ground. This realization forces us to question how representative our current models of prehistoric human behavior might be. If footprints consistently reveal activities and capabilities not evident in material remains, how much of ancient human life remains invisible to us? The latest scientific advances in footprint analysis thus create not just new answers, but new questions. Questions that cut to the heart of how we understand human prehistory and potentially require fundamental revisions to establish narratives. As we integrate these new methodologies and their sometimes paradoxical implications, we approach a potential inflection point in the study of human origins and migrations, a moment when accumulating evidence might trigger significant revisions to our understanding of when, where, and how our ancestors moved across the planet. The footprints left behind by our distant ancestors, once properly analyzed with these cutting-edge techniques, may ultimately reveal not just where they walked, but a much richer picture of who they were and how they lived than we ever thought possible. Chapter 10. The emergent pattern throughout our journey exploring humanity's ancient footprints. We've encountered contradictions, controversies, and competing theories. We've seen how new discoveries have repeatedly pushed back timelines and expanded the geographic range of our ancestors. Now it's time to step back and observe the larger pattern emerging from this global puzzle. The central revelation becomes clear when we examine the cumulative direction of footprint discoveries over the past century. Our ancestors were consistently more mobile, more adaptable, and more widely distributed than our previous models acknowledged. Almost without exception, when ancient footprints have altered our understanding of human evolution and migration, they have extended our timelines earlier, widened our geographic boundaries, and revealed greater capabilities than previously recognized. The Laetoli footprints showed bipedalism 3.6 million years ago, far earlier than once thought. The Illyrit tracks revealed modern foot anatomy in Homo erectus 1.5 million years ago. The Haysborough prints pushed human presence in northern Europe back to 800,000 years ago. The White Sands footprints extended human presence in North America to 23,000 years ago, thousands of years earlier than the previously accepted Clovis timeline. Australian prints confirmed human adaptation to that continent by at least 20,000 years ago. This pattern of earlier dates, wider distribution, and greater capabilities isn't random. It reflects a systematic bias in our previous understanding. a tendency to underestimate the mobility, adaptability, and geographic reach of our ancient ancestors. This underestimation stems partly from the inherent limitations of the archaeological record. Bones fossilize only under specific conditions. Stone tools preserve well, but represent only a fraction of ancient technology. Wooden implements, fiber crafts, and other organic technologies rarely survive. Footprints offer a corrective to this preservation bias. They capture moments of presence and behavior regardless of whether the individuals carried preservable tools or left behind remains that would fossilize. They reveal people on the move, often in environments where other evidence hasn't survived. The emerging picture suggests our ancestors weren't cautious, gradual explorers slowly venturing into new territories only when forced by population pressure or climate change. Rather, they appear to have been natural wanderers, quickly adapting to new environments and opportunities. Dr. Lisa Robinson, a paleoanthropologist specializing in human migration patterns, summarizes this revelation. The footprint evidence consistently shows that whenever environmental conditions allowed, humans rapidly moved into new territories. They weren't reluctant migrants. They were ambitious explorers. This pattern of opportunistic expansion appears repeatedly in the footprint record. The Saudi Arabian prints show humans moving through what is now harsh desert during brief wet periods. The White Sands tracks show people thriving in the American Southwest during the last ice age. Even more revealing is what footprints tell us about the social nature of these movements. At multiple sites worldwide, we find not isolated explorers, but groups including men, women, and children moving together, suggesting family-based migrations rather than specialized scouting expeditions. The Ng'arsiro footprints in Tanzania show what appears to be a social group in motion. The White Sands prints include those of children playing in puddles. The Haysborough tracks show adults and children walking together along an ancient estuary. These social groupings challenge the traditional narrative of specialized male hunters as the primary agents of exploration and migration. Instead, the footprint evidence suggests entire communities move together, adapting to new environments as cohesive social units. This more dynamic, adaptable, socially integrated picture of ancient human movement helps explain another puzzling aspect of human prehistory: the remarkable speed with which our species colonized the planet. Archaeological evidence indicates that within approximately 60,000 years of leaving Africa, Homo sapiens had reached Australia, adapting to environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforest to arid desert, an extraordinarily rapid dispersal for a species without modern transportation technology. The footprint evidence suggests this rapid expansion wasn't anomalous but characteristic of human behavior throughout our evolutionary history. Our ancestors, whether Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, or earlier hominids, consistently pushed boundaries and adapted to new environments. This adaptability likely stemmed from a combination of technological innovation, social cooperation, and cognitive flexibility, qualities that ultimately define humanity more than any specific physical adaptation or geographic origin. The revelation emerging from our study of ancient footprints thus transcends specific dates and locations. It reveals a fundamental characteristic of humanity. We are, and have always been, a species of wanderers and adapters. This understanding helps resolve many of the paradoxes we've encountered. If extreme mobility and adaptability are core human traits stretching back millions of years, then finding evidence of human presence earlier than expected or in unexpected locations becomes less surprising. It also explains why footprint discoveries consistently extend our timelines and geographic boundaries. Our previous models underestimated human mobility and adaptability because they relied heavily on preserved artifacts and fossil remains, which capture only a fraction of ancient human presence and behavior. The footprint record corrects this bias by revealing moments of presence regardless of whether artifacts were left behind or bodies fossilized. It shows that humans and our ancestors walked through many landscapes without leaving traditional archaeological evidence. This more dynamic understanding of human prehistory has profound implications for how we interpret both established and controversial footprint discoveries. It suggests we should be open to evidence of earlier migrations while maintaining scientific rigor in evaluating claims. The most extreme claims, like human prints alongside dinosaur tracks, remain highly implausible given everything we know about evolutionary biology. But finding evidence that humans reached certain regions thousands or even tens of thousands of years earlier than previously thought becomes more plausible. This calibrated openness allows us to maintain scientific skepticism while acknowledging that our understanding of human prehistory continues to evolve as new evidence emerges. It recognizes that today's scientific consensus was built by challenging previous consensus with new data. Perhaps most importantly, this revelation about human mobility and adaptability provides context for understanding our species' current challenges. The same adaptive capabilities that allowed our ancestors to colonize the planet now must help us address global environmental challenges. Dr. Michael Petraglia, a leading researcher in human dispersals, notes, "The footprint record shows that humans have always been remarkably adaptable. But we've now altered our planet so significantly that we need to channel that adaptability towards sustainable solutions rather than continued expansion." The ultimate message written in humanity's ancient footprints is both humbling and empowering. We come from a lineage of remarkably adaptable wanderers who consistently exceeded the boundaries others would place on them. Yet this same history reminds us that we remain part of Earth's ecological systems. As we close this exploration of humanity's lost footprints, we're left with a clearer understanding of our origins, not as a species that developed in isolation in one region before cautiously venturing outward, but as inherent explorers whose fundamental nature drove us to continually push beyond horizons. Our ancient footprints reveal not just where we walked, but who we are, a species defined not by geographic origin or physical characteristics, but by curiosity, adaptability, and an irrepressible drive to see what lies beyond the next hill. As we conclude our journey through humanity's ancient footprints, we return to where we began, with impressions left in mud, ash, and sand, preserved against overwhelming odds to tell us stories of those who walked before. These fragile records, these fleeting moments captured in stone, have consistently expanded our understanding of human evolution and migration. They've pushed back timelines, widened geographic boundaries, and revealed capabilities previously unrecognized in our distant ancestors. But perhaps their most profound message lies not in specific dates or locations, but in what they collectively reveal about human nature. Throughout our evolutionary history, we have been wanderers and adapters, opportunistically expanding into new territories whenever conditions allowed. This fundamental insight transforms how we see ourselves, not as reluctant migrants forced from our homelands by necessity, but as natural explorers driven by an innate curiosity about what lies beyond the next horizon. The footprints remind us that this wandering spirit isn't unique to modern humans. It extends deep into our evolutionary past, characterizing our ancestors millions of years before Homo sapiens emerged. It appears to be not just cultural, but fundamentally woven into our being. As new footprint discoveries continue to emerge from ancient sediments worldwide, each will add another piece to this complex puzzle of human origins and migrations. Some may reinforce current models, others will challenge them, pushing us toward even deeper understanding. The mystery of humanity's journey across time and space remains partially unsolved. Gaps in the footprint record, like the precise timing and routes of the first migrations into the Americas, continue to provoke debate and drive new research. Yet, even in this uncertainty lies a profound truth about the scientific enterprise itself. Our understanding evolves through a continuous dialogue between evidence and interpretation, with each new discovery potentially reshaping the narrative. And so we walk forward, following in the footsteps of countless generations before us, carrying their legacy of adaptation and exploration. Their tracks remind us that boundaries are meant to be crossed, horizons are meant to be reached, and the human journey continues with each step we take. If you've enjoyed this exploration of humanity's ancient footprints and the mysteries they contain, subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the forgotten corners of human history, where science and wonder meet to tell the remarkable story of our shared human heritage.